All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for the BOMA Kansas City Practical Skills Series, Fall Lawn and Landscape featuring Signature Landscape. We're gonna go ahead and have like an open forum discussion. So if you have any questions while our presenters are going through their program, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat function or just ask to unmute. So without further ado, welcome Jessie. Jessie is with Signature Landscape and she's going to introduce the company.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Crystal, for putting this together for us and giving us this opportunity. So I think everybody that I can see on the call here knows who we are and what we're about. We've been in business for over 30 years. I've been with Signature for 10 years this month, so it's pretty exciting. We obviously specialize in commercial grounds maintenance. We serve the entire metro area all the way to Lawrence, up to Grain Valley to the east, and just as far north and south. So we cover the entire metro. We've got three branches that we work out of. I represent the east, Eric represents the north, and Chris represents the west. So we've got three geographic locations with those. And my office just moved to Grandview. I moved into the Snowman facility with the rest of my branch. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Snowman. We purchased them last year. We're the largest grounds maintenance company in Kansas City. And by default, we were one of the largest snow removal companies in Kansas City as well. With that comes some challenges. So with the opportunity to purchase Snowman was a great move for us because it gives us that the chance to use their best practices melded with our best practices to give a great full service product year round to our clients. So we're excited to get into the snow season with both companies, all hands on deck. So excited to serve our customers in that way. So without any further ado, I will introduce Eric and Chris. They're going to do the bulk of the presentation today. They've got many more years of grounds maintenance experience than I do, so I'm excited to also learn from them in this presentation. Take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining in with us today. It's been a crazy year, so I'm glad that we can get together in a format like this and have some sort of normalcy, even if it is virtually. It was fun meeting or seeing some of you all last week at the golf tournament. We were talking about that briefly before everybody jumped on, but this will have to do, I guess, here for the time being. I know that Eric, Jessie, and I are extremely excited for the opportunity to discuss several key actions that we really believe in during the fall period. It's all too often in our industry that fall brings this sense of completion or ending. We tend to start to gear down, relax on some things, when in reality, fall is, there's still a lot to do. It's a critical moment for the success of the ground maintenance program and the overall landscape health. There's a lot of actions that need to be taken that will help improve your curb appeal, reinforce those early season services that were completed, and prepare your property for the rough winter ahead. In this scenario, September is kind of like the new April, right? Where you have a bunch of stuff that's going to happen in April or in September, similarly to April. These actions then carry on throughout the rest of the fall and even into the springtime, where your investment and your reward is going to be the shrubs with all the beautiful flowers and the blooms and all that. The actions that we're going to discuss today all represent what we affectionately refer to as coloring your roots. Coloring your roots involves 8 essential and incredibly important actions. Actions that the three of us believe that are often overlooked and or misunderstood. These actions make up services that should be considered for each of your property's grounds maintenance programs. I know that everyone is familiar with, the fall leaf cleanup, and so that's not what we're going to talk about today. Instead, we're going to focus on these services. We're going to talk about several turf applications that you should consider, a turf maintenance and rehabilitation program that you should look to implement, We're going to talk about the customized attention your trees and shrubs need during the fall and winter period. And then, of course, there's an irrigation piece to all this that we can't forget, or else we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Hopefully by the end of today, you all have a better understanding of exactly what we do in the fall and how that impacts your overall grounds and landscape health. Eric's actually going to get us started with a turf application that is sure to color your roots. Eric?
Yeah, but before you start talking, you have to unmute. I'm still getting used to the Zoom meeting. Getting it started out right. Well, look, with turf applications, with the first thing I'm going to talk about is really the essentials of these last couple of turf applications in the fall. You have an early fall application. It's more like a late summer. It's technically summer all the way into late September, believe it or not, even though it feels like fall out there. So it's more like late summer, early fall is going to be the first topic that I'll talk about. It's what we would call our round 4. Other companies call it different things, but it's essentially the timing in the application. And then I'll talk later about maybe the round 5 or what's called the winterization. And that'll be kind of the tail end of your turf application program. With turf applications, it really is settled science. You have biology of the plant that doesn't really change. The thing that changes, though, is the chemistry part of it, right? Turf applications are simply the chemicals that are concocted together to help provide the nutrients for the biology of that plant that helps it to sustain itself. So you really need 5 essential things to ensure a healthy, vibrant turf program. And a couple of these you can't help, but basically these 5 things are the right application, the right time of that application, and the right rate of that application. Those 3 things, you could do them all, have the right application and the right program, but if you do it at the wrong time, it's meaningless, right? So right application, right time, right rate, and then the right amount of moisture goes into the irrigation piece or whatever Mother Nature is going to provide for us, and then the right soil. So the last 2 are the kind of wild cards, right? How much moisture are you going to get in a given year? What kind of soil do you have on your property? As you know, in Kansas City, we love our clay soil. It's fun to try to grow grass in. It's hard, it's compacted. It has it doesn't have a whole lot of absorption rate in it. So when you're talking about moisture, you could have a 3-inch rainfall in the spring and about 2 inches of that runs off and it doesn't actually absorb into the soil. So you have these 5 key ingredients to ensure a healthy turf program, but those 2 are the kind of wild cards that you have to factor in. And that's why irrigation is important. Aeration in the fall is important, which Chris will talk about later. But these turf applications, it really is settled science. If you take any of these 5 ingredients out of the equation or you want to alter them at any rate, the turf is going to tell you about it. The turf is going to thin out, it's going to pale, yellow up, weeds are going to overtake it. If any one of those 5 ingredients are misplaced, wrong timing, rocky soil, clay soil, whatever it might be, but you can minimize that by a proper program and the right timing of those events. Because what the turf does as it begins to grow, the roots are taking up that moisture, it's taking up that nutrients, and it's extracting it from the soil. So you need to time your applications appropriately according to your natural biology of that plant. And that's what the turf application program is really all about. Because once it extracts it from the soil, it's used up. You have to have your next supplemental turf application to keep on feeding that grass to keep it nice and vibrant and green and lush all season long. And I would say for the round 4, leading into my round 4 conversation, For the whole turf application program, I would recommend at least 3.5 to 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet on your property in a given year. You don't want to do it all at once, you'll burn up your grass. So it's incremental changes throughout the course of the season. And round 4 and round 5 are very key to that component. Because round 4, you're going to put about 1/2 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Because here's the deal. Nitrogen makes your grass grow. It makes it green, makes it grow tall. But in the fall, you have two things that work against that's actually helpful. You have the day-night cycles. We're not having as much daylight, right? It cools the temperatures, especially nighttime temperatures are cooling down. So the plant doesn't have as many hours of the day to photosynthesize and use up that energy, soaking it up through the roots. So the day-night cycle helps us with that, but also the moisture content. We're usually getting nice, gentle rains, cooler temperatures. So what the plant is wanting to do by nature is to go into its dormancy phase. It's kind of like a bear gobbling up all the salmon out of the river because it knows it's going into hibernation. The plants know that they're going into dormancy, so they're soaking all that nutrients up, they're storing it in their roots. And if you can create a healthy stem on that grass, it's going to stay green for the fall, but it's also going to be building up its nutrient base to overwinter. So that 1/2 pound of nitrogen is going to be really helpful. It's going to be a quick burst of nitrogen because you want it to be a liquid application. The reason for that is you want to actually add a chemical called Trimec to the mix. Trimec is a broadleaf weed killer. Everybody thinks about killing dandelions in the spring because that's when the pretty yellow head is popping up everywhere. But you know what? If you actually treat those dandelions right now, before they go into dormancy, you're actually going to take care of it before they ever pop up in the spring. Now, a lot of folks want to skip that round of it, but again, it's settled science. That dandelion is doing the exact same thing that the grass is doing. It's greening up, it's getting its root base, it's tillering that root deeper and deeper, and it's taking all that nutrients in the soil and storing it up so that when it comes out of dormancy, it pops up big and strong in the spring. So you want to kill that right now so you're not chasing dandelions in the spring. And you also don't want to spot spray. This application, this round 4 liquid application, is not a spot spray. One, it's a liquid nitrogen. You're going to have green spots everywhere in your grass. Look like a checkerboard. You also don't want to overlap your spray because then you'll have tiger stripes in your grass, right? So you're greening it up with a nice, gentle, even blanket application all across your property. That's why a good turf applicator is highly recommended in this scenario. And also, if you spot treat, well, guess what? Those dandelions, they're not blooming right now. They're not yellow. So they're green. They're blending in with the green grass. And so if you try to go around and spot spray, you're inevitably driving over or walking over several dandelions or clover or spurge, any number of broadleaf weeds, and you don't even know it. And so what you're doing is you're pretty well wasting your time. You're going to have dandelions in the spring. So do a nice, clean blanket application in the fall. About right now, September 15th through about October 15th is the best time to do this round 4 turf application. So the next phase of the fall time, I'll give it over to Chris to talk about aeration and overseeding.
Wait.
Crystal, did you have a question?
Yes,
Okay.
I was on mute. I was trying to ask you.
Oh.
Okay, so Eric, you all had mentioned, well, I think Jesse mentioned that you all do commercial services. Do you also offer residential services?
We sure don't.
Okay, so then I have
Sure.
a question for you guys. If we're talking to folks that will be working on their residential properties, what product would you recommend right now? So for this turf treatment that you're talking about that will kill the dandelions now and the clover and do all those things, what product would you use if you go to the store to get something?
Good question. We would use a chemical called Trimec. Chris, maybe you know some generic versions. Maybe you can get a Grass Pad or Home Depot or something.
Typically, like if you're going to go to a Home Depot or a Grass Pad, any kind of weed and feed is going to be useful at this time of year. There's a lot of comboed applications that you're going to be able to buy through retail spaces. Scott's is really pretty good. Turf Builder makes a couple of fine products. You'll want to look at the active ingredients. If you're looking to do broadleaf, Trimec is what Eric is suggesting, and they'll have it on that label. We buy it commercially wholesale, so it comes as that individual product. It's not relabeled as something else.
Perfect.
And just to clarify, we don't do residential one-offs. We do HOAs and maintenance provided homes, but.
Oh, okay. That's good to know if anybody's
Yeah.
HOA is looking for somebody.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a great question, Crystal. And as we think of a program, even if we're thinking of our own residents, where does the main focus of that program lie? It's going to be within the turf, right? We're going to spend the majority of our program or our budget dollars focusing on turf health in the form of turf applications and fertilizers and herbicides, like Eric mentioned. The majority of the program focuses on mowing, so appearance of the turf. We spend thousands of dollars a year on irrigation just so that we get the right water content and the right growth and all this kind of stuff. So it stands to reason that the turf is quite likely the single largest investment of your grounds maintenance program. So we've gone through the entire season, and now the fall hits, and we tend to abandon it. We tend to think that, oh, we're done with that now. Now we have to think about winter. And as I mentioned earlier, there's little thought given to the tremendous amount of stress that the turf has gone under all summer. The heat, the traffic, both pedestrian and mowers and all this. And so there's not a whole lot of thought that's given to how to strengthen or to rehabilitate it. This is where my next talking point comes in, and it's aeration. You could also throw verticutting in there, though that's slightly different, but a lot of times those two are used with each other interchangeably. Aeration service is often viewed as a non-essential service. It's kind of like when you go and you buy a new iPhone and they recommend getting the little iPhone screensaver. You know, it's kind of like a pricey recommendation, but it's not necessarily vital to the operation of the phone, so you pass it up. But what happens when you drop the phone and it breaks? Aeration is kind of like a screensaver. It's used to protect the turf from the damage and is there to help you. Aerating your turf benefits you in 5 key ways. First, and Eric mentioned this in his point, Kansas City has notoriously dense clay soils. And so in the heat of the summer, all that cakes together and it's like concrete underneath the turf. So aeration reduces soil compaction by creating little core aerator holes, pops them out, and leads right into its second benefit. It allows for a better flow of all those nutrients, all that turf application that we put down, the nitrogen, any other potassium and other chemicals that needs to reach down there. It also allows oxygen to get down to the root zone, which is vital for revitalizing the turf. Core aeration actually increases your irrigation efficiency by allowing that water to get down to the roots, which will actually reduce your run times. It saves you money. It saves you cost of water because it allows the water to get to the root zones. I stress that because this is, again, one of those misconceptions of the service. Third, aeration is effective at reducing thatch buildup. Now, thatch is actually a good thing. It does help kind of cool everything out and it creates a little bit of a barrier. But it's kind of one of those, it's good until it's not. Too much thatch will actually shade out the crown of the turf and actually start to reduce and thin the turf areas. I mentioned again earlier that it helps increase irrigation efficiency. What it also does is it reduces water runoff by allowing water to get down to those roots. And then conversely, it reduces excessive puddling or pooling of the water because it improves the drainage. I said there were 5 key takeaways that aeration benefits your turf, and I'm going to wait with the 5th one for just a second. What we have to consider here is to ensure that the first 4 benefits are successfully realized, you have to do a few things prior to the aeration service. First and foremost, you have to make sure that you irrigate beforehand. This will allow the tines on the aerator to get down to about 3 or 4 inches depth, which is about where we want it to be for proper root zone. And then you also want it to have been recently mowed. When you do the aeration service, ask whether or not they're going to do a single pass or a 2-pass process. The 2-pass process should be done. This is going to be 1 pass it one way, and then the second pass is going to be 90 degrees to that first pass. This will get you about a core every 3 to 4 inches, which is what we're wanting to allow for the 5th benefit, which is seed to soil contact. And that leads me right into my next talking point, which is overseeding the turf. Again, these 2 services, aeration and overseed, are often lumped together, which I believe causes some of that misconception of the 2 services. You don't need to do them both in tandem. They can be done one or the other. Overseeding does benefit from the aeration process because, again, it increases that seed to soil contact. But overseeding has some other benefits that you shouldn't overlook. One of the best ways to combat weed growth in the turf in conjunction with a good turf application program is overseeding. What happens is the more turf you actually have growing, it reduces the amount of space that weeds can grow in. So we want thick, lush lawns to help us eradicate weeds. Overseeding allows us to do that. Overseeding increases the overall health of your lawn by enabling us to introduce the latest turf types. You know, Eric mentioned science. Science is always working. They're always creating new types of fescue or bluegrass or combinations of the 2 things. And the sooner we can get those into your lawns, the better you're going to be for that. It can also be useful to introduce, let's say you have a property that was new 5 years ago. Well, now everything's mature, and what was once sunny has now become shaded. Now we need to introduce a shade tolerant type. So this allows us to create and formulate a mix of turf type, turf seed that fits your exact solution on each of your properties. Really, the most critical thing to be aware of when you're considering your overseed is, again, the application rates. There is a science to throwing seed. If you throw too much, you're going to be prone to diseases, especially fungus, brown patch. There's also a possibility of stress due to the lack of nutrients available. If you throw too little, I think that we all understand what that means. You're going to basically have thrown your budget out the window. You're not going to really see any results. So typically speaking, in our area, we use fescue, bluegrass mix, and you're going to do roughly 6 to 8 pounds of fescue per 1,000 square feet with about 2 to 3 pounds of Kentucky bluegrass per 1,000 square feet. You're going to use about half of that in a shaded area. Really, you're just looking for a nice even spread of that. Again, keep in mind the seed to soil contact, a good irrigation. You want to soak and cycle. Don't over irrigate and saturate it. You'll drown it out. And then make sure that there's plenty of sunlight. Eric, I think you have a continuation of your turf apps there.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So once you've done your round 4 and you've aerated, you've maybe overseeded, you've been irrigating, you're cycling and soaking that new seed, putting it into place. You're also helping that round 4 application get down into the roots where it needs to be. About late October, early November, though, you're going to be winterizing that irrigation system, and now you're not watering that grass anymore. That's why, to kind of piggyback off of what Chris is talking about, overseeding, the timing for that really should be early, September timeframe, maybe as late as October 15th, just because Mother Nature might come in and throw a hardball freeze at you. In your winterization, you're of your system, of your irrigation system, is going to be sometime in late October, early November. So you want that seed to generate or germinate and get that first hard mow cut on it so that it can overwinter. But you're going to be winterizing your irrigation system probably before you put this round 5 turf application down. So this round 5 application, of course, at this period of time, you're not necessarily worrying about green grass or growing grass necessarily. This is all about root development. You're growing your roots, you're feeding your roots, and you're coloring your roots, preparing it for the next spring. And I would say, I mean, gosh, if you had to pick, all 5 rounds are super important. They all have their distinct functions and personalities, but round 5, I would say, is the most important turf application for the season, because when I said at the beginning, you put about 3.5 to 4 pounds of nitrogen on your property per 1,000 square foot. Well, in this one single round, you put about a pound, pound and a half. You get about 45% of your nitrogen for the entire year is summed up in this application. So it's super important to do it at the right rate, at the right time, with the right equipment. And it's going to be a quick release fertilizer. Again, no need to delay. You got to get that nutrients down into the soil quickly so that it can begin to absorb it and store that nutrients before the hard freezes come in mid to late December. When that grass grows to dormant, the grass will tend to brown out. It's because all of that nutrients is down into the soil and the roots. The roots are developing, they're growing. When you think about your shrubs, they grow in the spring and summer, they grow out. Well, your grass grows down and out in the wintertime. It's going down and looking for food, it's looking for moisture, and it's going to take that round 5 application with it. So you definitely want to get on that at the right time. And grass is wonderful. The science behind grass is it's designed with storage facilities in it. It's kind of crazy. They invented storage facilities. Who knew? Grass did that. It has storage components built into the root development, into the cellular makeup of those roots. It absorbs the moisture, because guess what? Winter is one of the driest seasons of our entire year. I'll get to that later in a bit. But it goes through a period of drought. It also is the less nutrient time of year. You don't have foliage blooming and pollen going crazy and thatch growing. Everything is underneath the soil. And so round 5 is key. But note, what else has storage compartments built into it? Weeds do. So if you just wanted to skip round 4, remember we talked about round 4 doing a blanket application and spraying those broadleaf weeds. Well, if you wanted to save some money and skip round 4, well, guess what? When you put round 5 down, you're putting gasoline on a bonfire of dandelions ready to explode in the spring. So beware of that. Have you ever seen a 2-foot tall dandelion? That's because it wasn't treated in the fall when it was at its weakest moment. It was fed this wonderful round 5 nitrogen, and it's just exploding with life come spring. So beware of that. Round 5 is the best application, but it has to be accompanied with a nice round 4 application. This again it's going to allow for deeper roots. Those roots developing deep into the soil are going to allow that plant to come out of dormancy in the spring, lush and green and vibrant. That early spring, like late February all the way into early April, is going to be a time of dormancy, coming out of dormancy for that plant. And you've already given it all its food back in November and December. It's literally living off of the food you fed it back a few months in advance. Because our round 1 application, you might put it down in February or March, but it's soil temperature activated. So the effect of the round 1 application, you won't really see the the results of that, the green grass effect of that, until about April or early May. So this round 5 is key to early development, early dormancy, coming out and being vital and strong for the spring. And it's going to live off of what you feed it come November, December. So again, the right rate, the right time, and the right equipment to do that is paramount in that. Chris, you want to jump in and talk about how to wrap up the landscape plantings for the fall?
Absolutely. Any questions first? I know that we've covered a lot to this point, and good. We've done an excellent job, Eric. Well done. No, I kid. Eric mentioned several things there in his when he discussed the action of that round number 5. Dormancy and right timing. When we talk about shrubs and shrub care, tree care, those are 2 very important things to consider: dormancy and right time. Typically speaking, you're going to commercially prune your shrubs about 3 times a season. At home, as a resident, at your own home, as a homeowner, probably don't need to do them that much. I have some shrubs that I'm looking at in my yard that I planted 6 years ago and I've never touched, and they look beautiful and wonderful. But anyways, you're typically going to have about 3 services throughout the season. Now, it's important to understand exactly what that service is. That's generally more of a tip pruning. It's to maintain and manicure. It's not to really do much for health or deep pruning or anything like that. That's where dormant shrub pruning comes in and is my next area of focus. There's a misconception about dormant pruning, and it has to do with the timing of the service, which is why I'm bringing it up now. We're talking about fall. A lot of people think you do this in the fall. This is not something that should be done in the fall. It's actually supposed to be done in late winter or early spring when the shrub is still dormant. And there are several reasons why this is the case. If you start the process too early, actually, let me stop and go a different direction. The process of dormant shrub pruning is pretty aggressive. You're taking something that's very overgrown or large and you're reducing it, sometimes all the way back to the ground. But most typically you're taking about 2/3 of the plant material away. So it's pretty drastic. In a lot of cases, it's going to leave you with just 1 or 2 leaves left on there. And so when you're thinking of doing that, and if you do it too early, what is that plant going to do? Eric mentioned it has a lot of stored energy. It wants to now push all this energy out. So the problem of doing it too early and in the fall is you run into a couple of things. One is it's going to push new growth. So now what you've done is you've created this new tender growth of this shrub. We get hit with a hard freeze. Now you lose that. The other thing that's happened is you've made cuts to this shrub and you've opened it and exposed it to water, pests, disease. Now it's going to sit with all of this happening, plus the winter weather, plus the ice and snow and the wind, all through the next 3-4 months. That's going to be pretty damaging to that plant. Could possibly even lead to complete dieback in some cases. So it's really important to get the timing correct here. When you time it right, you do it late, mid-March to late March, early April. It's going to have just a few weeks while it's still in its dormancy. Then it's going to come out. It's going to have what we all love, that springtime temperature, the nice sunny days. We're getting warmer. It'll have the rain that it needs. It's going to be there pushing that growth, taking up the nutrients. We're going to combine that with some of the other early season services, and it's going to get off on the right foot. The dormant pruning should be seen as a rehabilitation or rejuvenation pruning. It's actually going to breathe new life into that plant material. It's going to add safety to your properties, to your residents. Think of any instance where you've seen these very overgrown burning bush a lot of times around entrances into a building. They're 6 foot tall and you can't see behind them, you can't see through them. You're going to take all that back down to about 2.5, 3 feet. Increase in safety, increase in appearance. What also is happening here is you're creating better air circulation, not only for that particular shrub, but the things that are around it. We have to think of how everything affects every other thing when we're talking about landscape. Trees affect how much sunlight gets down to the shrubs, shrubs down to the perennials, turfs affected by all this. So you're increasing air circulation. You're letting the sunlight get into the interior of the plant and revitalize that. You're removing the dead stalks or the dead portions of the shrub that may harbor disease and pests. So again, you're making everything else around it healthier. The shrub itself is becoming healthier. Your property, your home is looking better because of this service. Lastly, when it's done correctly, it's almost like getting a brand new landscape. You've taken what was old, you've made it new, you've reinvigorated it, you've made it healthier, you made everything healthy. Springtime's going to bring you some healthy and happy shrubs. We've talked about 7 of our action items. I told you there was 8. Eric's going to cover the last one.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. One of the big things that you can do in the wintertime that nobody, not me, not Chris, not Jesse, none of us want to do, but it's a really cool thing and something that is so cheap and inexpensive, and we should all want to do it because it's going to breathe life into all of our plants, and that's called winter watering. Who wants to drag a hose around your property in the middle of January when it's freezing and water your shrubs? But have you ever wondered why your boxwoods, for example, along sidewalks tend to die out over the wintertime? Well, yes, it has a lot to do with the salt that was sprayed all over it during the wintertime, shoveling that wonderful snow. But even with salt damage, what we would call salt damage, it can be at least reduced greatly with winter watering. Boxwoods by themselves will struggle in the wintertime. Our winter weather here is by far the driest season of the months. I know especially the women will understand this doing your hair. It's always staticky in the wintertime, right? You comb I don't have that problem. No static here, but when you comb your hair, when you put a shirt on, there's static electricity in the air. It's because the air itself is so dry. It creates friction, and that friction creates static electricity. Well, your boxwoods in particular are what's called broadleaf evergreens. A pine tree is not a broadleaf. You understand a Christmas tree, the needles of a Christmas tree don't look at all like a boxwood, a broadleaf evergreen. Well, that broadleaf, it's still trying to photosynthesize. It's still trying to create food for itself. It's also the pores of the leaf, underneath the leaf, are still breathing air, and those are susceptible to our winter dry, cold air, and it dries out those leaves. So you can help that with winter watering. And of course, your irrigation system is all winterized, put to bed for the winter. Nobody wants to turn that dude back on in January and have, a risk of overspraying a sidewalk and slipping and falling and having winter damage to your irrigation system. And then of course, nobody wants to drag a hose around. So the good news about that is, even though winter watering is one of the best ways to take care of your evergreens in particular, it doesn't take a lot of effort. At my own house, I drag hose. I wait for about a 45-degree day, and I get the hose out real quick, and I deep root water my shrubs, especially my hollies and boxwoods, my evergreens. I'll talk about the flowering trees and shrubs in a minute, but because they definitely it definitely helps them as well. But in particular, your broadleaf evergreens will benefit just by staying alive and being able to feed those roots in the wintertime by doing that. So one time a month is really all is necessary to water your plants in the wintertime. And if you want maximum flower production from your knockout roses, from your magnolia trees, from your spireas, all of your flowering trees and shrubs in particular, water in the wintertime. Again, those trees and shrubs have storage compartments, big water tanks built into their roots. And if you fill those up during the winter when it's typically super dry, I mean, think about it, even a 12-inch snowfall, 10 to 12 inches of snow equals about 1 inch of rain. So how often do we get a 12-inch snowfall? Not very often. So even in our snowiest winter months, it's relatively dry compared to our spring and summer months. So winter watering is a primo. If you can do it, I recommend you do it. Try it out at your own home this winter. You know, just trust me. Do it on a few trees, a few shrubs at your house, then implement it on your commercial properties, and I promise you, you'll see a lot of results.
Eric, I feel so dumb.
I would recommend it.
I feel so dumb. I had no idea you were supposed to water your outside plants during the winter.
Yeah, who knew, right?
I did not know that. I had no idea. So that was like a hot tip for me.
There you go.
Thank you for that. That was great.
That one was free, okay? Well, really, in conclusion, we've talked a lot today about a lot of things. There were 8 essential elements here. I don't have a memory really to rattle them all off, but it has a lot to do with your turf program, right? Your round 4, getting that liquid application down, spraying your broadleaf weeds before they have a chance to overwinter, putting that premium round 5 turf application down at the right rate at the right time to overwinter, get those roots with the nutrients stored up adequately enough so that they're big and bold for the spring. We talked about aeration, overseeding, kind of the time frame of that, the reasons for doing that, rehabilitating your turf because of the stress that's been put on it over the course of the summer, spring and summer. All of our fall services like shrub pruning and dormant pruning in the early spring and the winter watering, all of those essential elements are developed in a clear and concise, customizable grounds maintenance program. And if you have any of those elements missing from your grounds maintenance program, I would highly recommend you get pricing for that. At least put it in optional. You know, who wants to winter water, but at least put that in an optional place so that you can pull it out and use it when necessary. So look at your grounds maintenance programs and see where those missing links are, because that might help you get 2021 kicked off with a great start. Chris, did you have anything else you want to follow up with that?
No, just if there's any questions about anything that we covered.
We did get a question.
Okay.
So we
Good.
have a question about what we should be planting right now for the spring if there's stuff that should be going into the ground. And I think this is in reference to residential stuff, but I guess you're planting the same things, whether it's residential or commercial, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you asking,
absolutely.
is the question about like plant material, shrubs, trees?
Yeah, I think plants. And I don't know if that means flowers or just anything outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, typically speaking, fall's a pretty decent time to put plant material in the ground. There's some, I guess there's some things that are more of like a dig hazard in the fall rather than a plant. But anything that you put in the ground, again, you want to make sure that you're getting it watered in. You want to allow the roots time to get somewhat established before any kind of winter or freeze would hit. So that would be my guiding or my guidance there is do it now so that you have time to get it watered in, get it somewhat established before any kind of weather hits. You know, again, you can plant stuff in the ground, put stuff in the ground throughout the winter as long as it's dormant at that point. But the timing with that is more important, just to make sure that you get it in so you can get it watered.
Yeah. The fall is a wonderful time to plant really anything because of really all the elements that we talked about today. Think about those storage tanks and those roots. You're not asking a flowering shrub to produce flowers and produce root development at the same time. You plant it in the fall when it's dormant, all it has to do is focus on root development, get wintered in, get settled in, and then when it comes to spring, it's already established and it can start flower production immediately. So getting the right turf applications or right fertilizations for your trees and shrubs, and then winter watering will definitely help that. In terms of just annual color, I would say probably the only thing is tulips. You want to plant those things in about early December. They kind of do the same thing. They sit there dormant. They store up all that energy. That bulb is just a big storage tank, and what it comes up in the spring is what's been stored up in there all winter long.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, we got another one. This one says, the sprinkler system needs to be rebuilt and that won't be until spring. What should I do now, if anything?
Water. Set up temporary irrigation. I don't know if you're asking about, like, are you going to do aeration, overseed, that kind of thing, or are you just simply asking for the health of the plant material and the turf that's already there? Usually in the fall, kind of like the spring, you can go a little more time extended between waterings. The heat's not as bad. We're not drying out as much. You have cooler soil temperatures in the evening. So if you're looking to just kind of take care of what you have there, I would set up and you're able to, I'd set up a temporary irrigation. You can go buy a timer at Home Depot, put it on your faucet, and kind of control it that way.
Yeah, it all depends on what the grounds looks like, what the turf looks like. If the turf is going to be viable enough on its own, it's established enough on its own to overwinter. It's not. It's bare dirt.
It says everything is dirt.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. I would imagine then you're either going to do a complete overseeding.
I'm waiting for it to come through. It's like old school chat.
Yeah. Well,
I need to see the little bubble.
Yeah, right.
If it's bare dirt and they've, go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, I think it's just all dirt, and so she needs to start fresh.
Yeah.
Well, you can definitely do an overseed right now. That would be useful. Again, in that circumstance, if you have bare dirt, I would do probably like a slice seeder, I think would be easier. It's going to put the seed almost underground and have really good soil to seed contact there. And then what you do is you irrigate it enough to where it would stay damp but not saturated. Again, we're not looking to squish into the dirt when you walk, but you want to be able to see that there's water in the soil. And then you should start to see germination. If you were to put it down now, you should see germination within a week and a half to 2 weeks, depending on the seed that you use. If you're going to go to a Home Depot or a grass pad, they do have some seed that comes along with a water retention capsule built around the seed itself, which will help you kind of elongate that need or the time in between waterings.
Well, to answer this a little bit further, I would just say put a little caution in advance here. Any bare dirt situation, it's going to take at least 2 full seasons to develop a full lush green turf again, irrigated or non-irrigated. Non-irrigated might even take 3. And you should not even expect full germination this fall. A lot of that seed is going to sit there in the soil and come up and germinate in the spring. So you're going to have patchy germination. It's all a matter of how deep did that seed get into the soil? How far does it have to come up before it actually sees sunlight? So you're going to see a slow period of germination now. It'll have a rebound in the spring. You might need to spot seed those bare spots in the spring again. But it's going to be tough. You're going to have bare dirt, so weeds are going to be a premium there.
Okay. She said she wants to put down AstroTurf. I don't think she really wants to, but okay.
That's a different maintenance program.
I think that got her questions in. Thank you. Okay, we have one more that's asking you to please, once again, list the order of the turf applications, please.
All right. The full order, or just the 2 that I spoke about today. The two that I spoke about today, the fall ones in particular, are round 4, which needs to be done in September 15th through October 15th. And then the round 5, November 15th through to about mid-December. That's kind of the premium timing of those two.
Can I add something? Since Eric
Yes.
talked about watering in the winter, if you don't want to call me right after you water in the winter, you do want to make sure that it's like a 45-degree day or warmer and that you unhook your hose afterwards.
Yes. Yes.
Please.
Yeah. Drain
No
your
burst pipes.
Yep.
That was a really good tie-in, Colby. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just picturing everybody like watering in the winter because I know that it's so easy to forget and you do it at the beginning of winter, but if you're watering in between, you might forget. So
Yeah. Yeah.
That was good. Okay.
I can tie into that also, actually.
Nice.
If you don't want to have to replace your concrete and redo the facade, the brick on your building, you want to make sure that it's 45 degrees because the freeze and thaw will cause cracks in your bricks and your sidewalks.
Mm-hmm. The good thing is I don't think anybody's wanting to get out a garden hose at 32 or below. So that's a nice help there.
Okay, perfect. All right, does anybody else have any questions? Burning questions?
I bet you guys didn't know there was so much science involved in grounds maintenance.
I didn't, but I was super into how into the grass growing you were. You were very excited about the science of it, and it was very clear that you're into it. You're in the right profession, Eric.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm been doing it too long to turn back now.
Good. Oh, I have another question. Okay, when is the best time to water? So like the time of day, what time are people supposed to water?
Okay.
Who's going to jump in? Because there would be competing ideas. My personal belief is going to be early morning. You want the water to not sit on it overnight, again, because it cause some fungal issues and things of that nature. So you want it to be able to use up that energy that the water has throughout the day. So early morning, have it done typically before the sun rises, because you don't want any of the water to evaporate. That's a big issue with us in the summertime. So before the sunrise, early morning, and then if you have to at home, sometimes I'll give another shot to particular plants like hydrangeas. Will often wilt during the day. I give them a quick shot just so I boost them, but not too much to keep them wet overnight.
Yeah. And to piggyback off what Chris is saying, I agree wholeheartedly with that. If you try to water your lawn in the middle of the day, the wind is generally going to blow that water all over the place, and you're going to get about 30% of that water actually hitting the ground where you want it. So if you're talking about putting as much of that water that you're putting out in your irrigation, getting it on your turf where you want it, do it before the sun comes up, like 2 or 3 hours before the sun comes up. Maybe go, have it turned off by about 9 a.m. But once that sun peaks across the horizon, the wind generally starts to pick up as well. So that's tip number 2 there.
Okay. Those are all awesome. Does anybody have any more questions? No,
I was going to say one thing, just a plug for our social media. We've got, we update our LinkedIn, our Facebook, and our Instagram pages. So we're going to be doing some fall plantings that are pretty to look at over the next several weeks. So I think if you just search Signature KC on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, we've got somebody in-house that takes lots of good pictures of everything. And I know she'll be putting up lots of good fall pictures. So just a plug for that.
love it. I love
And we blog about all this stuff too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming and joining us. And thank you to everybody that listened in today. Colby and Brandon, it was nice to see your beautiful faces. All right. Thank you all and have a great rest of your week. And I hope to catch most of you at our raffle on Wednesday morning.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.